Welcome back. It's great to see everybody. I can't tell you how great it has been to see everybody's faces individually, collectively. We've missed it a lot. Feels like it's been a lot longer than 2 years, but I know you've been extremely busy since we met last, and that's a good thing. And I hope, as Mike alluded to, that you've noticed that AABC has been really busy during that time as well, even under the sort of lockdown conditions. But we'll talk about that a little bit more as we go forward here. And I'm going to try to get through this quickly because, as Mike mentioned, we do have some new awards that we do want to give a little time to and make sure we have enough time to cover that today. So I want to move into what I think is going to be some new and some fun things, because we've been asking you to get involved, and what we want to do here is we want to take a step back and we want to honor some of the people who have already stepped up and done a lot of work and contributed to AABC. And really I have to throw this back to Mike because I looked it up, and it was almost exactly a year ago that Mike said in a board meeting, I want to look at ways to honor members who are serving on behalf of AABC. I don't think we do that enough. And he brought that up multiple times and said, we need to do something here. And we kicked it around for a couple board meetings and conversations in between, and what we ultimately came up with is 2 new ways to do that. And the first one that we're going to talk about is they're going to be annual Outstanding Service Awards. So that's going to be members that have gone above and beyond in the past year. So we're going to do this every year at the annual meeting. And you can see from the description there, recognizing a small number of members who contributed significantly to AABC's programs and overall mission over the previous year, whether that's committee service, presentations, publications, any other activity that has a positive effect on AABC and on its goals. So we're going to announce now that we have 2 awardees this year. And the first one is Justin Garner with Engineered Air Balance. Just listing here, as you see on the slide, what he has done in the last 12 months. As Wade mentioned, he was a co-presenter and was involved in the ASHRAE Epidemic Task Force representing AABC. He was a liaison for all of between AABC and Engineered Air Balance for all the communications you're getting about the training opportunities at that training center that have been very well received by members so far. And remember that EAB does offer a pretty significant 20% discount to AABC members on that training compared to what they give to other people in the industry. So do bear that in mind. But he did a lot of industry partner prospecting and promotion. He was the co-presenter on 2 Tab Talk webinars. He did an interview article that appeared in Consulting Specifying Engineer. He did a podcast with Engineered Systems. He's a speaker here today. I'm pretty positive we left out something out that he's probably done. But I think you can see there why he was ultimately chosen for the award this year. So with that, I'd like to ask Justin to come up and receive that award. Thank you, Justin. And then for our second honoree this year, and it pains me to have to give Brian an award, but it does, just a little bit, hurts my heart. I'm kidding, but that's why I had Mike hand him out. I would have handed Justin his, but in all seriousness, Brian is if you've met Brian at all, you know the kind of, and I mean this in the absolute most positive way, just the Energizer Bunny energy that he brings. He keeps going and he keeps going and he keeps saying yes when he's asked to do things to help, and he volunteers to help even when he's not asked. But again, just quickly, even just the last 12 months, chair of the marketing committee that's been doing all that work. He led a Zone 1 town hall that talked about continuing education and other things. He was also a co-presenter on 2 Tab Talk webinars. He was co-presenter for a pretty important lunch and learn that happened with NAVFAC, with I forget how many of their offices, 6, 8 of their offices spread all, where they just wanted to learn from AABC about test and balance, maybe some things that they ought to be doing with their specs. He wrote an article that appeared in HVACP magazine. He did a podcast with Engineered Systems. He's done a lot of the research because he's a tech guru, basically, even separate from test and balance technology. So he did a lot of research on the upcoming AABC app that we'll have more to tell you about and hopefully launch next year. And again, also a panelist for a 2021 presentation here this week. So for all you do, Brian, thank you. And please come up and accept your award for this year. Thank you. So I said we'd come up with 2 ways that we wanted to do this, and part of Mike's original request and wish was to have more of a lifetime achievement type of award, because AABC is that kind of organization. You know, how many of you have been members of AABC for decades? And the people who we lean on, in many cases we do so, and they take it on willingly for those kinds of lengths of time. It's truly measured in decades, not just months or even a few years. So in other words, they went above and beyond, not just once or twice. They had extra good years where they did a lot. They've done this year after year for many years, and we started to lean in the direction of calling it and making it a Hall of Fame. Most of you guys who know me, know I'm a big baseball fan, and that's just where my head goes. But it seemed to fit because one of the reasons we ultimately went with that is that it seemed to make sense to us as we talked about honoring the people who are still active and who are still around and who deserve this kind of recognition. It didn't make sense in many ways to only honor those people who are still around, because you have been around and thriving and successful for 56 years. That's a long time. The discipline of testing and balancing isn't much older than 56 years. So it's a long time. You've got a lot of people spread across your history that would also deserve this honor. And the notion of a Hall of Fame kind of includes that inherently. And that way, we can take a little bit of time, and we hope to do this each year, to honor some of the giants, the founders that are the reason we're still here, in 2021. Especially some of the early ones. If they hadn't done what they did, when they did it, with the passion they did it, with the amount of work they put into it, I'm not standing here, you guys aren't sitting here, you belong to some other organization that sprung up, not this one. And that's important. So just to read it and explain it, we are treating this is the highest honor that AABC can bestow, is to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. So members past and present who over the course of their careers have provided extraordinary service and contributions to the association, or more generally to the field of testing and balancing, and they should also fully embody AABC's founding principles of quality, integrity, and independence. And you'll notice we've been using that a lot more in AABC's marketing material. It's not just the AABC logo. Many times it's quality, integrity, independence. That's what the founders believed in. That's what all of you believe in. That's what we look for in our members. and we want to emphasize those qualities. So the board, again, we had many fairly long discussions about this and how to do it exactly. And I do want to note, again, there are others that are going to deserve this honor and who will receive this honor, but we didn't want to just draw up a list, induct everybody, and say, okay, done, and not talk about it for years. We want to talk about this at least a little bit each year. So we decided, and the board decided, that the best way to do that was to induct 3, and only 3 to start with, what we call historical inductees, and those are 3 of AABC's founding fathers. So for the first of those is Arnold Pearl, who founded National Air Balance Company. And again, you have information on this in your packets, but Mr. Pearl was AABC's first president. He was also its national chairman, which is essentially what they called the executive director those days. So Arnold was me and Mike, you know, rolled up into one guy, and trying to get an organization off the ground in the first place. He was widely considered the driving force behind the formation and launch of AABC, and in addition to having a personality and a vision that truly inspired and motivated people, he was involved in developing the original test and balance procedures, the first national standards, the membership requirements for AABC. He did a lot with union negotiations, which were a much bigger deal back then, technician training, examinations, national promotions. He was involved in everything, and his vision for a professional association of independent test and balance agencies became a reality through his efforts. He was, you know, to use a $5 word, he was indefatigable. Anybody that I ever talked to that knew about him, he just didn't stop. He lived and breathed it. But he had that ability to organize and motivate individuals for the common good of the association, which again, that's what the association is about. You're here because you don't agree on everything, but you agree on a handful of really important things. And Arnold Pearl understood that, and he understood how to communicate that and keep people together even through difficult things. So Mr. Pearl is, of course, no longer with us, but the company he founded, National Air Balance Company in California, is still a member. And that's something that's also true of the other 2 historical inductees. And frankly, I think that's pretty remarkable all by itself, that those 3 companies are still around 56 years later. But at this time, to accept Mr. Pearl's trophy on behalf of NABCO, Sean Bunting of the company is here today. And Sean, if you could just come up and accept that on behalf of Mr. Pearl. Second inductee is Walt Lipski of Engineered Air Balance, and just to read from his, again, it's in your packets, but Walt had already been within the HVA industry for years. He served as a Navy pilot. 1955, he moved to Dallas, Texas, and he knew enough about what was going on in the industry that he said, you know, this is I'm gonna open a company that's gonna focus on testing and balancing HVAC systems. And he founded Engineered Air Balance in 1956. So 9 years before AABC had even come into existence. And we thought it was important to mention, you know, his vision that he had articulated, and if I remember correctly, I think is hanging still on the wall of Engineered Air Balance to this day. But he said that Engineered Air Balance, and I think mentally you can all substitute your own company names here for as far as the goal, was established to fill a major need of architects, consulting engineers, building owners, and contractors the need for a qualified organization to be responsible for the fulfillment of specified design and obtaining optimal performance and economical operation from the air conditioning equipment installed in commercial, institutional, and industry installations. And that was a, I think you all take that for granted now that, I'm sure you're all nodding around, yeah, that's what we do. Well, he wrote that down. He figured that out, 65 years ago, and put that down on paper and said, this is what we do, this is what we need. And that was really important, and he worked very closely with some of the other early founders. He was a director of AABC in the early years. He assisted with writing the first 3 editions of the AABC standards. In 1971, he began a task group within ASHRAE to cover testing and balancing, which a couple of years later became Technical Committee 9.7, and Walt actually chaired that committee for 8 years, and just did a lot of good work in laying down the foundation within ASHRAE for what was going to go out there into the industry for test and balance. So again, just another giant from the early days that just put in a ton of work and time and passion to create something because he believed in what AABC could be. And for that, we want to honor him for that. So accepting Mr. Lipski's award for induction into the Hall of Fame, we have Justin Garner on behalf of Engineered Air Balance.
I never had the pleasure of meeting or knowing Walt, and some of you guys did, I think. But obviously within our company, the way that Walt thought was well known. And what I can say for certain is that he would be extremely proud of where this organization is today. Ray talked about the vision, and yeah, he had it for EAB, but he wanted it for the entire industry. And all the stuff that we mentioned earlier, I don't know if he was a crier, but he might cry today. He would be proud of this, and I don't deserve to hold this, but I'm happy to accept this on behalf of EAB for him. So.
Thank you, Justin. So the final historical inductee, again, just for this year, is Taylor Kahoe with Kahoe Air Balance Company. And his key contribution, generally agreed with AABC, was developing a series of technical papers, technical information on testing and balancing. Again, remember how young it was, remember how new it was as a discipline. A lot of this stuff had to be committed to paper for the first time in many cases. That they had to figure these things out based on what the systems were like in those days. Everything pneumatic, everything that they dealt with back then, and a lot of those papers helped form the basis of the early versions of the AABC National Standards. He also developed the Kahoe Field Manual, which was used to disseminate information everywhere on testing and balancing, viewed from more of a field perspective. I'm pretty sure most of you probably have a copy of the Kahoe Field Manual somewhere in your offices. It's still maintained by his company, especially for technicians. And Taylor also served as AABC president for 6 years, and this is something I hadn't noticed before in looking at AABC's history. As best I can figure out, nobody else ever served as president of AABC for that length of time. He served for 6 years. So, yeah, think about that. And trying to herd the cats, as people were creating this brand new organization, and he sat at the head of that table along with people like Arnold and Walt Lipski for 6 years. And in addition to his technical acumen and many contributions to the test and balance industry, there was a note that he was just widely considered just a very generous man and just a good guy to be around. I thought that was interesting that was kind of written into the history in particular. I of course never met the man, but he was another again of those early giants, and we want to pay homage to that by inducting him into the Hall of Fame today. And accepting on behalf of Kahoe Air Balance today is Doug Meacham. So again, we wanted to pay tribute to some of the early founders, but we did want to also honor someone that was still around, someone that's still here, it's still contributing. Eddie, why you gotta laugh like that? That was not a laugh line. I didn't have a pause there for that. But to select the first modern nominee, working with the board, we settled on a process where the board would nominate worthy candidates for induction to the Hall of Fame. And they settled on what really seemed to everybody to be a perfectly logical group of three different members who've served AABC in some very important and very indispensable ways for a very long time in each of their cases, and really helping to keep some of the association's most important sort of internal engines running, kind of like the infrastructure of the association, the things that we sometimes take for granted, but are very needed. And again, I want to note that these are not the only people, not even the three nominees, let alone just the one person who won. These are not the only people, probably even in this room, who deserve this honor, and there will be others honored. But we needed to start somewhere. And again, we want to have people to do this every year, to take a little bit of time to honor the people that have put so much into the organization and helping to make it what it is over the years. So the first of those nominees, who Mike already mentioned earlier, is Joe Baumgartner with Baumgartner Inc. And I'm not going to read, you've got the long summary in your packets that kind of details everything about Joe and why he was deemed worthy of being nominated for this. But he's basically, to summarize it quickly, he's a one-man peer review show behind Tab Journal, and has been literally since Tab Journal's first issue 30 years ago. We just passed the 30-year anniversary this summer. And there's some notes in your packet about he's edited, reviewed, rejected or accepted, fixed, whatever he's done to some. It's 1,000 articles or more of all kinds of lengths on all kinds of topics, and it's just a tremendous amount of work over a year. He's reliable. He's always there. He always comes through for every single issue, so that we put them out every year. And the last thing I'll say about that is, I think all you need to know about Joe as a person is that when he got the news that he had been nominated, he wrote to me that he was beyond comprehension that he would be mentioned in the same company as George and Gaylon. And he also said, and he voted for one of the other ones, not himself. That's Joe. So that's the first nominee. Second is George Ebert with Fluid Dynamics. And remember, to be ABC certified, especially as a company, you need to have a TBE. It's what keeps companies going, what keeps the association going. For 35 years, George was the one that kept that exam, AABC's most important exam. He kept it tough, he kept it fair, he kept it consistent, and he kept it going. just on a nuts and bolts level. And his willingness to not just to do that, he probably would never say it was tedious, but that had to be the tedious work of grading these things over and over every year. But his willingness to continue to do that and also to help people understand where their weaknesses were. And it's that second part especially, that kind of teaching aspect that's what always impressed me the most about what George did in shouldering that responsibility. Good associations try to help their members get better. That's, that's what they try to do. They try to lift people up. A lot of the things Mike talked about earlier are all about that. And George always understood that, and he lived it, and he did it in the main thing that he did as a contributor to AABC. So that's George. And then the last of our three, again, fairly obvious, we thought, nominees for the first round was Gaylon Richardson, engineered air balance. And I'll say that the headlines on Gaylon's service, as you can see here, that they're always going to probably rightly focus on the standards. It's what he's most known for. I think you could say. It's always been a passion of his. But when you try to fill in the rest of the story, how many things he's raised his hand to take on, how many ways he's championed both AABC and testing balancing more generally in the industry over the years, I'm going to be honest with you, I gave up trying to remember them all or even ask people who could give me a complete list. I gave up. So you can kind of consider Gaylon's list. There's those three things, and then there's just an et cetera, that goes like about this long at the end of it. And he's really, and I say this truthfully, he's one of the small handful, and I don't mean just AABC, I mean generally, he's one of the small handful of the hardest working men I've ever known. So that's Gaylon. So those were the three nominees that we put out to the membership for you to vote on. And I will tell you that more than a few people reached out and told me I'd vote for all of them, if I could, if we had done it that way. And the voting was very close, and there really truly was no wrong choice here, no matter who was inducted this first year. All of these guys are going to go in eventually. So with that said, the 2021 AABC Modern Era Hall of Fame inductee is George Ebert.
Am I on?
You're on. Take it away, George.
Okay. Well, first of all, I'm extremely honored, without a doubt. It's overwhelming to be an inductee of anything, especially as important as the Hall of Fame to the AABC. So makes me blush, Ray, to tell you the truth. It makes me so proud. Now I know how Derek Jeter felt a few weeks ago. Makes me very proud and very honored. So thank you very much. When I first heard that we were starting a Hall of Fame, I thought, wow, that's really an excellent idea. And then when I heard the candidates, or when I read who the candidates were, and Gaylon Richardson, I thought, excellent choice. Joe Baumgartner, perfect. And then George Ebert, I thought, oh my, what am I on that page for? I don't even belong in that league. But anyway, I thought, well, okay, I'm on there, so they're gonna vote, and I won't have to, I certainly can't win with those guys ahead of me and on the same page. So those guys are treasures to the AABC. They give so much, and like Ray said, they ultimately both will be in the Hall of Fame, and they certainly deserve it. I've always considered grading the exam to be a privilege. For my peer group to trust me with the TBE exam for 35 years, it's just the highest compliment. And I'm so proud that I was able to maintain it, and I felt like we graded it fairly and had a lot of many very deserving TBEs pass. So now it's 35 years later, and it's time for me to kind of move out of the picture. And so in the last year and a half or 2 years, we've been developing a computerized test, or it would be computerized, the grading would be computerized. And that exam is, I felt like I was kind of concerned initially that it wouldn't be a fair exam, because in our world, not every answer is finite. If you're a few thousand BTUs off here or there, it's really not the wrong answer. But with the guidance of Alpine Testing, and with Ray Burt being our glue for the developing of this test, I think we came out with a really good test, and challenging and fair. I wanted to thank our members on the, where'd that go? Make sure I get them all. On the committee, that was Sean Green from Environmental Test and Balance, Jim Hall from Systems Management and Balancing, David Harold from Engineered Air Balance, and Justin Lewis from Technical Air Balance. And of course, Ray was there. And one of the people that were in charge of from Alpine Testing, Christina Holloway, she did a great job keeping us five guys in line and keeping us focused. So my son Doug said that when I hear the music in the background play, it's time for me to wrap it up. So I hear it now, and I think it's time for me to give the phone or the mic back to Ray. But this is just a great honor. It says, in recognition of and of extraordinary service and contributions to the Associated Air Balance Council and the field of testing and balancing, adjusting and balancing. And so it's a beautiful trophy, and I'm so honored. So thank you very much.
Thank you, George.
Thank you very much. Very touching.